Hello, everyone. Hopefully, I need to double check here if everything is fine. There are 3-4 people watching already, so you can give us some feedback if the audio is good. Hi, Kevin. Say something.
Well, you can hear me?
I can hear you. I hope everyone can hear you. Okay, so welcome, Kevin. Kevin Kane, game designer from Portland, Oregon, US. Correct me if I say anything wrong. His most famous game is Nexus, at least the one I knew about him through, and but actually published 2 more games at least that I know. We'll talk about it in a bit. Do you want to introduce a bit yourself?
Like I said, I'm Kevin. I guess in my spare time, I'm a game designer. A couple of games I've designed. I've been interested in abstracts for a long time, so it's a lot of fun to finally get one out there, and it seemed to enjoy it then. So,
Cool. So okay, let's start from I think is your most popular game. It's also on Board Game Arena. You can play it on Board Game Arena. It's called Nexus, but it's spelled NXS, right? But you call it Nexus.
Mhm.
So first thing, why you call it this way?
Good question. So the game probably came up with the idea probably in 1995 or so, and so it's been kind of floating around for that long.
When it's been published officially?
I published on my website officially. You could only play online in 2015, so it took me 20 years to actually do something with it. But back when I first designed it, I called it Nexus, and I think that if you know anything about the game, it makes sense because you're making connections between your pieces and the border and stuff, and so it's all about connections. And so I thought that was an appropriate name. But then when I went to register it under Board Game Geek on the website, you did a search for the name Nexus, and there was like 10 or 12 other games already Nexus. And I couldn't do it. And websites with the name Nexus in the title were tough to find. And so decided to kind of go minimal and drop the vowels and just go with NXS and still call it Nexus.
So it's not to do with the pirate team or the sea team. It's something you added later.
Yeah, the pirate theme came along a lot later.
Okay, so initially there was just sorry.
No, it's always been a pure abstract. But later on, in order to get a little bit more market appeal, hopefully I went with the ship theme, the sailing ship theme, because some of the pieces that I had from here from like one of the early editions.
Oh wow!
Were like these little wood pieces I put together, and so if you're familiar with Nexus, you'll understand what the markings on the piece mean and how they move and everything. Sort of the 2 heights of it, if you can see that on camera, always kind of reminded me of a sailing ship, and so for me that was a natural when I wanted to put a theme on it. I went with the sailing ship theme because that's kind of what I've always seen in my head.
Nice. Yeah, makes sense. I can show actually now for those who never played before. So every hexagonal piece has got some arrows that indicate the movement, like the potential direction where you can move the pieces. And there are lines that indicate the capture direction. So the pieces don't capture in the same direction they move. which is quite interesting on an hexagonal board. I don't know if I've ever seen something mixed like this. Did you do some research while you were designing the game, I guess, right?
I didn't really do any research. Keep in mind, 1995 was pretty pre-internet, so it was a lot harder to find and discover these things back in the days. And it was more just a mathematical thing. I wanted to go with hexagons because they have more sides, right? More options on what you can do at the piece, more different directions you can move.
Mm-hmm.
And but if you think about a square, it usually technically has 8 liberties. It has 8 ways out of that square, the diagonally to the corner. So I thought, well, a hexagon has a corner too, and a hexagon, you can move diagonally on a hexagon through it. It's just a little jump there, that hexagon diagonally. Once I came up with that idea, it was a pretty quick. Quickly, I decided that I wanted things to move differently than capture, because I thought that would be
interesting. So you never tried to actually have a square board or square pieces. You knew already that hexagonal was the way.
One of the games I was playing back then, back in those days, was an EXO game called Starfleet Battles. And it was an old strategy game from the 90s based on the old original series Star Trek. And it was a really, really solid war game. It was a lot of fun. And of course, that had a hexagonal map. And so I just kind of knew from playing that game that I really wanted to do something. That's
okay. So for those who never played before, basically you have 2 armies. That's how you call them. Your pieces. Well, actually, you can play different number of pieces, different size. There's a small, medium, and large, right? Depending on how many pieces you want to use and what kind of pieces. Each of this is different. And something very peculiar that I like is that you actually introduce one piece that cannot be captured. Cannot capture and cannot be captured. The merchant here. So you see this one here with threefold symmetry. Has no lines running through one vertex to the other, so basically it doesn't have any capture and it cannot be captured. Which is kind of used as a, I don't know how to call it, like the piece at the front to protect all the other pieces behind and slowly push into the opponent position. At least I think that's the way most of people play, right? I don't know actually, because it's still kind of new as a game, so there are a lot of new strategies coming up, right?
Then, like you pointed out, there's different piece counts that you can use, and so in the short game where you only have 7 pieces on the board, the merchant is not used anywhere near as much as a blocker. Usually, you're just racing it into grab territory. So they're quite different in that.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, when you play the short game, you're playing only to 9, which makes for a bit faster paced game too. So.
Mm-hmm. So the goal of the game is to get territory in the opponent base, home base. I don't know actually is there a specific name for it? The opponent board.
Well, in the opponent's territory, yeah, you're trying to capture your opponent's territory. Mm-hmm.
And the way to do it, actually, if I can show a game. I have a game I'm playing right now. Let me see. But I don't have anything in the opponent territory yet. I know I only one. So basically,
there are probably some examples. Probably some examples if you go to the Nexus website.
Right. Yeah. Correct.
The tutorial.
So yeah, it's actually very well done. I remember I learned through this the first time, and it was really good. Like because it was a bit confusing at the beginning, but So let's go
to yeah, there you go. And then click on territory.
Yeah, so basically you get a number of points equal to the territory line that connects one of your pieces to the border of the two territories, and also by connection between your own pieces. So if you look at here, so you have two pieces here in white territory. Black is scoring 3, 4, 5, 7. And so basically you and you win when you reach a certain threshold, a certain goal. So it can be 9, 10. How many points is actually the maximum that you've set? I usually play 10.
Usually you don't want to. Yeah, you usually don't want to play more than 13. Although I have played with the full set of pieces because you can play with 12 too and have the long game. I have played that from 19, and that's a challenge.
Yeah, because you need a lot of pieces to. Yeah, you see here. There's a way for white to defend, basically to. To interpolate in between the opponent pieces, and therefore they don't count anymore as a points. So yeah, I think it's a pretty cool. It's a combination of cool mechanics. The fact that you need to get into the opponent territory, and the connection between your pieces actually gives you a score. Also, the fact that you can't play on a single hexagonal board, because most of the game that you would think of, they have just one hexagonal board. But here you need to have two different ones, different colors, otherwise doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
How did you come up with it? Did you know already? Or there was something particular that?
Well, so the story behind why I'd even decided to design a game in the first place was you remember an older abstract game from the 80s called Terrace? It was on
Terrace.
it's featured on Star Trek: The Next Generation, and if you guys are nerds and you can remember that show, in 10 forward on the lounge, you would see this game sitting in 10 forward, and it was a multi-layered board, and it had little dome-shaped pieces and very futuristic looking. And I actually, through just because they happen to be close by, I sent an email to the inventors and asking them if they were planning to release a computer version. And the Buzz Tyler was his name. It's the guy that with Anton Dresden actually invented this game. And Buzz was nice enough to reply to me and say, "Well, actually, yeah, we're going to come out with the computer version. You said you lived in the city near me, so why don't you come over to my house and be the first person ever to play the computer version outside of the development?"
Wow.
And so I actually got to go over to his house and just like a couple towns over and meet with them and him and Anton and play the computer version. I mean, they were very nice. And so I thought to myself, well, gosh, if these guys that are just a couple towns over can invent a game, then so can I, right? So I kind of challenged myself to come up with a game. I knew I wanted to do something with hexagons. And I knew that I wanted to. One of the things I liked about Terrace was that it translates all the complexity into the shape of the board, and everything moves the same way. And it's like I kind of missed each piece having its own personality, like in chess. So I went instead of translating complexity to the shape of the board, I wanted to basically make each piece a map of how they move. And so that's kind of how I started. I just kind of gave myself a challenge. And once I started experimenting with different types of boards, I knew I wanted it to be a game about territory, similar to Go. I'd played a little Go at the time. But I kind of missed starting out with two armies facing each other, and so I knew that I wanted to have like an intersection of those two concepts, and starting out with two armies fixing each other, but at the same time having it be about territory. And that kind of naturally led me to think that two separate boards um, marking out each player's territory would make more sense because if the game's gonna be about territory, it makes sense to start the game with each person having their own territory. So it's kind of how that came about. Um, and yeah, it's some of the things like you mentioned, the merchant ship being invincible. Some of that just sort of evolved naturally because I was just looking at how many different ways can I put together these markings on the pieces, and one of them clearly had no attack. I was like, well, that's a weak piece if it doesn't have any attack, and so I just decided, well, okay, it can't attack, but I'll make it invincible you know. And then once I started actually playing with that piece, I realized how key it was to making the game interesting. So
yeah, I think it wouldn't be the same without the merchant, right? Like it would be pretty different.
But originally, I actually had three merchants on the board, and it's too much because you can just rush up and block off the border, and then you're done. So I reeled it back to two, and then down to just one per side, which seemed to be the right balance. But if you're playing the three-player version, and that's something that we haven't talked about yet, is that you can play this game with three people.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, when you're playing with three players, there's that border doesn't really exist, and so you can use more merchants, which is kind of fun.
Do you have a tutorial here for 3-player or?
Yeah, I think if you go, let's see.
Three-player games. Okay, yeah. So you kind of connect. I mean, it's very cool because you can really connect. Have you tried with 4-player? Does it make sense if you connect 4 of this?
Yeah, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see that you can play with 4 players.
Okay, well, sorry. Well, you can increase it as much as you want.
And you could theoretically play with 6. I've never done it because I've never gotten 6 people who know how to play Nexus in the room all at one time. You can absolutely play with 6.
Because the one that you can buy physically can really can be assembled in a way you want, in principle, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you bought 2 sets of Nexus, yeah, we could play with 6 players. Well, you'd have to have a spare board. At any rate, it would be done. And I've actually played with 4-player quite a bit, and I shouldn't say quite a bit, several times, and it's a lot of fun actually. You usually stick to the 7 pieces, the short game layout, and there's rules where you have to capture territory from the people that are farthest away from you. You can't just capture territory from the person next to you.
Otherwise it would be just one against the other.
Yeah.
And then just two separate games.
Right, and so it forces you to interact, and it's actually a lot of fun, believe it or not. I thought it was going to be kind of crazy, but it's actually a lot of fun.
I can imagine. It makes sense. And it's not like, and I like it's kind of scalable because a lot of games you can't easily go from 2 to 3 to 4 players. And honestly, I also play 99% of Abstract for 2 players, and I think a lot of people intend the pure Abstract like that, but there is always chance to expand and try something a bit different, a bit more weird, but more fun potentially. There will be always problem of teams, I guess, and the king making effect if you play in 3 players, but
yeah, it's not. the king making isn't too bad because you're forced to get your territory from each player. You can't just gang up and only get your territory from the weakest player. You actually have to get it both, which forces more interaction. You find, and of course, it's the first person to win, right? Is to win the whole game. So you can't eliminate a player and then just play each other because it's the first person to get the 10 or whatever you've decided on win.
Yeah.
So you find yourself up in strange situations where you're actually defending your opponent's territory because you don't want the other person to win, right? So you get these really interesting interactions with three-player. It's actually a really good three-player game.
Yeah, actually, this is a good idea. It's a good idea to alleviate the king-making effect, because if you need, as you said, to get in both territories, so it's not allowed, you can't win, you need at least one of your pieces to get into both opponent territory.
Yeah,
right?
you have to capture
1/3 of it for each enemy player. Okay, sorry, I'm reading here.
Correct, yeah. So if you're playing the 10, it ends up being at least 4 spaces from each player, and then wherever you get the balance of 10. And again, so that really forces those interactions, and it can force you to defend your opponent's territory at times. And so it's actually pretty fun.
Pretty good. Yeah, it's not implemented in BGA, right? You can't play 3 players.
I want to. That's next. One of the things next on my radar is to do a different BGA implementation that will allow 3 players. Also, I implemented the game, and to get technical, I implemented the game in kind of a weird way for Board Game Arena, and I would probably want to go back and just redo the whole thing in standard Board Game Arena style of programming and implement it a little bit better. So,
well, it's a bit weird now. You think the way it's implemented now, or?
Well, I can't animate pieces because it's all just drawn on the screen.
Okay.
So not actually icons I can animate. So I want to implement it to make it a little bit more consistent with BGA style, and maybe actually make the little ships look like little ships and things like that.
Yeah, I actually like very much that. Oh, wait, what is it? That the cannons, like that the lines to capture pieces is represented by the cannons of the ship. Right. So yeah, I like this. It thematically consistent. Works well. And instead the sails are over facing the edges. So makes sense. What else I want to say? Oh well, you can buy a physical version, which is very pretty. From the website. You ship also international, right? Like outside US, but I think it's a bit more expensive.
Yeah, unfortunately, international shipping has just gotten crazy, and it's really unfortunate because if you got a copy of Nexus a few years ago, the international shipping wasn't too bad, but now it's just so expensive. It's really too bad.
And there are many versions with different colors. It's what kind of material is it? Is it plastic? What kind of plastic?
Yeah, they're all 3D printed plastics. So it's PLA.
PLA, okay.
Pretty durable. Yeah.
Nice.
Pretty durable.
I guess some people will print it themselves, somehow. Maybe not with this pretty sails, with the ships.
They'll actually sell the STL files on that website too. So if you have you can buy the files.
Maybe that's more affordable. Okay. What else I want to ask? I want to ask you something else. So you consider it a territory game? It is a territory game. But it's not a territory game in the way I don't know. I always conceive it like Go or Amazon or I don't know, or Tumbleweed now. I don't know if you if you know about Tumbleweed. It's played on
I do,
external
yeah.
board as well. And nothing. I just like very much the concept that is is the connection between the pieces rather than the space, like in a more
Mhm.
abstract way, the space that you can grab. Um,
I think you pointed out Amazons, and I would say that's kind of the only one I can think of off the top of my head that uses a similar kind of idea of starting with pieces on the board,
mhm.
um, but it's a territory game. Um, well, in Amazons, I mean, you're running sort of more running out of territory than trying to run
Yeah,
your opponent out of territory, I suppose, than straight capturing it. But it's the only other one I can think of that has that mechanic.
and actually another thing that I didn't mention is that well you will understand it while looking at the figures, but the orientation of each piece is very important. So during your turn, you move a piece and then you rotate another piece or the same piece, and you are forced to do that. And there are some situations where actually you can kind of do a double attack in the same turn, sort of like you capture and then you rotate, attacking something else. And then your opponent cannot protect both pieces, or cannot. He has to recapture, but at the same time you create a new attack rotating. So there are like this additional mechanic makes everything even more complex and fun, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of yeah, it's kind of there are games like like Hermetica and some games like that where you actually have two actions or more. I think the Hermetica might be three.
Mm.
But this is the only one I know of where your two actions are move and a rotate. And you mentioned that the rotation was forced. That was sort of a late addition to the game.
Mm.
I had, like I said, I'd kind of had this thing hanging around for 20 years or so, and drag it out of the closet and make my friends play once in a while. But once I finally decided to really put it out there, um, I realized that making the rotation optional when we're playing in person um, is really painful because you would have someone would move, then they just sit there staring at the board.
Yeah, you don't
They're
know
like,
if they.
"Yeah, are you going to rotate? Oh, I'm sorry, I passed." And they would forget every time, and so I decided to just make the rotation mandatory because it actually simplifies the turn. You know when your turn is over.
Mhm.
Um, and again, another emergent property of that is that towards the end of the game in particular,
Mm.
you will often find yourself in situations where you don't want to rotate something.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
So, and that sort of adds to the complexity and the tension in the end game.
Mhm.
So I was really happy I made that choice because for new players, they get a little frustrated by it. They're like, why do I have to rotate something I don't want to? But for people that stick around and play a while, they realize how integral that rotation is to the game.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy I did that.
Yeah, in the opening, you can actually rotate something you're not using. Something is still in the back of your territory. But then, yeah, as you said at the end, when you have very few pieces, then you want to you don't want to rotate some of your things because apart from the what's his name, the Man of War, which has it's called Man of War, right? Which has many
Don't
attacking
worry.
directions. Um, Most of them have only like two directions, and so if you rotate, you can like if you're forced to rotate, then you'll find yourself in an orientation that is not the one that you want. Um, and I wanted actually to show. Well, this is a game I have in progress because I think another cool property that emerges is that at the beginning of the game, you have this situation where there is a crowded boundary, like at the frontier, all the pieces kind of clog there. So it seems a bit weird at the beginning, but the way you position them is very important because you can't rearrange them very easily. Like one of your pieces is stuck in one side. There are all your pieces behind. You can't just jump over or go around. So and then there are some captures that arise during the middle game, I could call it. I don't know. And then as a result of this capture, which might be like even exchanges, like same kind of pieces are captured. So none of the player seems to be in a material advantage. Still, the asymmetry, like the position becomes asymmetric very easily, and this means that then the territory capture phase, the kind of end game, like it's very related to the previous phases. I think it's pretty cool. To be honest, at the beginning I was a bit frustrated. Was like, why I have all these pieces stuck here? I don't know what to do. But then I kind of learned that there are many different ways to arrange your pieces, and I still kind of don't understand which of the pieces I can sacrifice first, like send first to the edge, not the edge, sorry, to the front of the army. Still need to figure it out.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about Nexus is that you don't have pawns and queens, right? So you don't have a big dichotomy in how valuable each piece is.
Mm-hmm.
But through the Nexus Discord, we did actually get together, on the Discord and kind of come up with the relative piece values a while ago. They're fairly close, but there are differences for sure, and so that would be a good guide, I would think, for you, anybody that's looking to learn about the relative values of the pieces.
It's the same value that is shown on your website as well, or has been changed since then?
No, it should be. I can't see what you're looking at. Exactly.
The Men of War value is 8.5.
Oh yes, that's correct. Yeah, that's the one.
It actually that much. I actually didn't think about it.
Well, if you look at it, if you kind of look at them all in comparison, right? Like even the least valuable piece is worth 8. So.
Okay. Oh no, makes sense.
It's not. It's not a perfect system, and much like in chess, when
relative values.
Much like in chess, a knight at the edge of the board is worth less than a knight in the middle of the board, and so it can be very, very variable. Like for instance, the brigantine is probably the least valuable piece, but you're trying to defend your territory in the end game. Those brigantines are so maneuverable, and they can, with one rotation, they can go any direction. And so having a couple of those hanging out in the middle of your board while you're trying to defend your territory can be very valuable.
Yeah.
But at the same token, at the frontier, at the border crunch, they're not so valuable because the capture direction facing backward. So it's very relevant what part you're in, what the value of pieces are.
And the strongest one is probably, where's the one valued 10? The cutter. Yeah. Because
the cutter has that much value because it can dive into your opponent's territory at the end of the game, and it's surprising how much difference that going 2 spaces versus 3 spaces can make. It doesn't seem like it would be a lot, but it can lose you the game for sure.
No, I realized that. Yeah, actually, I always try to keep the cutter for the end game, I never throw my cutter in the middle of the of the fight.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Sometimes you can't help it, but yeah, usually I try and protect my cutters.
Okay, yeah, pretty cool. Shall we move to the other game? So I think this is probably less known, but kind of different, like completely different. Well, let me see. I can actually go from here. Or evil. So EVL or evil for
Evil, yeah.
How did you come up with the name? First of all.
Well, same. Yeah, with I set myself a challenge to make this game, and I really wanted to distill what is the most abstract concept in these kind of games where you're fighting an opponent. And so I thought, well, good versus evil is about as basic, as abstract as you can get. Of course, you're fighting the bad guys, right? And
Yeah.
and I knew I wanted to go with a 3-letter name. Again, because I wanted to match Nexus, kind of, with the global brand identity.
Yeah.
And so I thought of things like GVE, good versus evil, but didn't really like that as much, and so I just went with EVL, which is kind of short for good versus evil, but it's about as abstract as I could get the name too.
Okay.
Plus, when I was playing with logos, I really liked the way the evil logo came out. So.
Oh yeah, let me see. Oh, this one. So, apart from the name, I think the most interesting thing is the board itself, right? The geometry of the board, which is, I don't think there are like more than 3 games in the world that have been designed on this kind of board. I cannot say for sure, but surely it's one of the most uncommon you will ever see. How did you come up with this, and what kind of advantages brings, if it does? I'm sure it does.
Well,
In terms of
evil
gameplay.
was yeah. So evil was a design challenge I set for myself. As I was talking about with the Nexus,
the second challenge.
Yes, as I was talking about with Nexus, I prefer games where you start out with 2 armies on the board. Games that start out with an empty board and then you fill it. I don't know why, but they just interest me less. And so I actually wanted to challenge myself to make a game that started with an empty board, because I wanted to push myself in a direction I don't naturally go. And so, and then the second challenge was I wanted to do something with heptagons, which are the 7-sided spaces that you see there. And so I just started playing with different ideas of how, how that could come about. And so I decided that I really liked that particular tessellation of heptagons, where they come together surrounding kind of a conjoined pentagon. And I thought that was the most interesting of the possibilities. I like kind of the way they surrounded it. The first game I tried that did that was a game called Angels versus Demons. And
we're on the same theme.
Yeah. And in that one, the angels moved on the heptagons and the demons moved on the pentagon spaces, and they never
asymmetric.
Landed on the very asymmetric. It's kind of triple asymmetric. They moved differently, they captured differently, and their goal was different.
Okay.
And so all of the challenges I set for myself in that game worked, and the game worked. I have to say, it just wasn't all that much fun to play. So
Yeah.
I said, well, this isn't the game I want. It's not very much fun to play, and so I kind of started from scratch with that board design. And that was when I challenged myself to start with an empty board. Um, and then that quickly evolved into, well, you can uh, on the because the heptagons are surrounding the pentagons. I thought, well, a custodial capture kind of a mechanism where you capture the pentagons by surrounding them with the pieces on the heptagons. I thought that would be a interesting mechanic, and that evolved pretty quickly into the sort of stacking game that it is now. Stacking and unstacking, and um, of course, I was influenced by TAC. I mean, as a pretty
Mhm.
obvious that those sort of stacking games like that, TAC is similar. But unlike TAC, I wanted to have more of a Mandela, or no, what was it?
Mancala.
Mancala, thank you. That's escaped me. I wanted to have more of a Mancala style sewing mechanics where you have to pick up the whole stack and drop exactly one behind you as you move. Um, I knew that pretty early on that I wanted to sort of force you to leave exactly one behind, rather than being able to just sort of leave, two here and go
Hmm.
that way. So
Makes it a bit more linear, more also easier to learn and to play. I think stack sometimes is a bit
mhm.
confusing because you have a long stack and you can drop two there, one there, three there, like there are so many combinations that it makes it more complex, but also a bit more chaotic. Um, so basically, in Evo, you play on only on the heptagons, right? You
Mhm.
don't really play your piece on the pentagons. But you capture the pentagons by sandwiching. Can I say sandwiching? Sandwiching the pentagons between pentagons that you own. And you own a pentagon if the topmost piece of the stack is of your color, right? I haven't played it in a while, but yeah. And then you win when you reach a certain number of pentagons to capture, right? Is the center particularly important in the
It's
strategy-wise?
very important. Yeah, it's very important.
Because you,
But there are some advantages to playing on the corners. It's harder to have your stack taken away from you when you start on playing on the corners,
mhm.
just because it's harder for your opponent to reach it, and then you can kind of strike out from the corners and reach a lot of area. But yeah, I would say the center is for sure the most important part of the board.
So you start at the beginning by placing, and then you decide if you wanna place or sow. I don't know how to call it in a different way. Yeah, and sow your stack, um, and basically capturing other people's stack, right? Like your opponent's stack. If your piece end up on top of your opponent's stack. What's the goal? Like how many pentagons you have to capture?
10.
10. Okay. Again, 10 was like a balance number. Did you try different numbers
I
and then
did.
play
10
test?
is 10 is one more than I think it's one more than half the pentagons that were on the board. I think there's 18 of them if I remember right. So arbitrarily started out with 10, and I tried some different combinations, and 10 really seemed to work about the best, um,
Okay.
surprisingly.
And there is a rule for which there is a maximum number of pieces in a stack, right? You cannot have more than 4 pieces, correct? Because I see here in this situation, for example, this game I'm watching now, there's this white stack here at the bottom, which is stack here. Like the black. I don't know if you can see the board, but the
Yeah,
black stack next to it, kind of blocking the white one from going to the center, he has to go all the way around. But well, maybe it's actually not a bad idea. 1, 2, 3, 4. You will capture all 2 pentagons. So I see what you mean. Like if you start from the edge, maybe it's easier to go around without being captured. And well, once one pentagon is captured, then it can be recaptured by your opponent as well, right? It's like you don't take that pentagon forever.
Correct. Yeah, you have to hang on to them. And then, so once the first person to get 10 of them all at once is the winner. All at one time.
Oh, so they have to be all at one time? No.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is you can't just, it's not a cumulative. You can't, get one and then lose it and then get one and then lose it.
Okay.
Pentagons. You have to have them all at one time at the end of your turn and then you win.
So whenever you capture that heptagon, you take a point, and then that pentagon is again available for your opponent. But you cannot capture your same pentagon again, right? If you already own that, you cannot sew again around the same pentagon, but your opponent can. So, okay. Yeah, because I guess if the pentagons were not capturable anymore, then it will become a bit complicated. Well, maybe we'll make a different game. Like you have to reach all different areas of the board. But anyway, I think this works. This works. You know best what works for the game.
It seems to work pretty well. That one's still very, very young. Nexus has been around for a long time. It may not have been publicly available for too long, but I've played it a lot. And Evil is a very new game, and so it wouldn't surprise me if it needed some tweaking down the road. Right now, it seems to work pretty well.
You didn't think about an hexagonal board for this? I mean, it would. I don't know if it would work though.
I don't know. I like I said, my design challenge was to use heptagons, so I hadn't really ever thought of what it would be like with hexagons. But maybe it would work.
Okay. No, just thinking. Well, I think you're talking about hexagons again. Your last game, well, I don't know if you designed more, but these are the 3 most famous ones, is actually a variant of the classical game Hexentafl, the Scandinavian chess, let's say. And is an hexagonal variant. It works pretty well. If you don't know how an Hexentafl works, basically it's the most ancient asymmetric game, abstract game. And there is a king who needs to start from the center. Well, this is a hexagonal board, but in the Hexentafl is a square board. Start from the center, and you have to escape to one of the corners. And then the opponent's army doesn't have a king, but the only goal for them is to surround your king before escapes. And I think it's the same here, right? Or did you tweak the rules somehow, or did you have to change something to when you go from square to hexagon, or?
Well, when you're talking about the classical Viking game, you're not talking about one thing. There's so many different variants and board sizes, and so but nothing that I did here is really any different than depending on what variant you're playing with Hexentafl. It's just a very small board with very few pieces. Really, it was the big difference. And then, of course, the hexes give you more, variety and directions you can move, which makes it interesting. The king in the smaller variant is shown there can only move one step, whereas the pieces that are attacking him and his defenders can move as many spaces in a straight line as they want. And so that makes the king very slow and vulnerable, but he's got to get to one of the corners to escape. Again, similar to other Hexentafl variants.
Well, this is a big difference because I think in most of the Hexentafl variants, the king can actually move as many squares they want, right? Or
again, it depends on which. Yeah, it depends on which variant you're talking about. I think the smallest board size, which is 7x7, if I remember right. I think in some of those variants, the king can only move one at a time. So
okay, I'm not sure about.
But with this small of a board, with this small of a board, and this one came about because I was just sort of playing around with the different types of games that you could play on basically half of a Nexus board and one of the sides of a Nexus board. I was just playing around with what's out there that you can actually play on this, and one of them was Nick Bentley's a game called Bug. You can play on this size pretty easily, and so there's a bunch of games. I've got them listed somewhere on my blog or something that you can. There's a bunch of games that you can play on the Nexus board, and I had just really kind of gotten into Hexentafl and had decided, well, you know what? I want to try and see if it'll work on a board this tiny because I think it's smaller than the smallest Hexentafl board that exists. And so I at first I didn't think it was going to work. I thought, well, there's no way this is actually going to function, but it actually does pretty well. The only thing I had to tweak is how you surround the corner, because usually you have to be on opposite sides in a straight line to capture something that's on a hex.
Yeah. So
of course, the corners.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, the corners don't work that way, so you just kind of have to surround them loosely.
Okay, yeah.
That was really only difference.
Normally, you capture like very similar to the Hexentafl, so a custodian capture, right? So when it's sandwiched between two opponent pieces. It's the same for the king, because I think the king in Hexentafl needs to be surrounded by all four sides.
Yeah, it again, it kind of depends on which variant, but usually you have to surround him on four sides, I think, on the bigger boards, and then maybe the smaller versions.
Only two.
Sometimes you only have to surround him on two. In Hexentafl, if the king is on his throne in the middle, then you have to surround him on three sides. But anywhere he's off of his throne, you only have to surround him on two.
Okay.
It makes it dangerous to get your king out, but it's the only way you can win, of course, is to get to the edge. Opponents.
It's good that you can play with the Nexus board. So you buy one game and you can play multiple.
Yeah. And it actually works surprisingly well. It's a little bit faster paced, I guess, maybe than classic Hexentafl.
I guess it's small as well.
Yeah, small board, and it's pretty aggressive, and
Now, I like this variant with the Nexus pieces. Will they? In this case, they capture, like if they move and they capture as the Nexus pieces do.
Oh no, they just
it's just okay. Like
they're just you just use them, yeah. It was basically just so people didn't have to buy a separate set. They could use Nexus for deployment, but they move like regular, any direction.
Hope that'd be a nice crossover.
It would be interesting to try. Honestly, it would be interesting to try. I never really thought of that, but
Hexentafl. Well, anyway. And I will say the name works well. Hexentafl. By chance, it works very well.
I'll have to try that. Much good.
Yeah.
good idea. I feel like the king would escape too easily, but it would be interesting to try.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, we talked for almost an hour.
Mhm.
um, I just want to ask you, I don't know if you play other kind of games or apart from abstract games.
Mostly,
No.
yeah, mostly I play abstract games, and there's lots of them out there that I like. It's such a great time because there's so many out there that I really
Agree?
enjoy. But other games, I kind of on both sides. I don't like games like Karistan and those kind of strategy games because they have a
Mm.
luck component. I don't like
No luck.
Settlers of Catan
Okay.
because of the luck component. But on the other side of it, you're going to with a playing with a group of 4 or 6 friends, and you're just playing a game that has silly rules like Flux, the card game Flux, where the rules
Mm-hmm.
change with every card that comes out,
Mm-hmm.
or that where it's all luck, or games like uh, well, I can't think of them now, but for the most part, or cooperatives. I kind of like cooperatives because then you don't
Okay.
feel like you lost
Like,
because of the bad roll of the dice.
like pandemic or I don't know. And that's
Pandemic's a good one. I can't remember the name of the one that I played where it has the Starship Enterprise in the middle and the bad guys are attacking the Starship Enterprise. Cooperative. It's a good one.
okay.
But yeah, that's kind of the games I like.
Cool. I don't know if anyone has a question. There are a few people in the chat, like 6 people in the chat. I don't know if anyone has a more question. I don't know if you want to share more about, other hobbies you have, something related to games or not, or unrelated to games. It's fine.
Um,
We
yeah, I
talk
don't
about
really
everything here.
don't really have too many hobbies. I mean, I like to travel. Right? So I guess that's a hobby. I like to travel when I'm able. But
Because I mean,
that's
this
just some.
gaming is your hobby. It's not your job.
Mhm.
It's a
Yeah, exactly.
okay,
Um,
okay.
the other thing I did want to mention is that
Hmm.
one of the new add-ons that I recently came
True.
up with for Nexus,
See, I forgot completely
it
to mention
adds,
that.
yeah, no problem, is that there's I have a seller deck of cards that has 18 cards in it, and you can actually play pure abstract with it, and you can randomly pick 2 or 3 cards and then give your opponent the same card, and so you can play completely abstract, or you can go more random and have asymmetrical powers. So you start the game with different powers, or you can play it kind of Onitama style, where there's a shared card in the middle that you cycle through, or there's several different ways to play. But basically, what they do is the card allows you to sort of break the rules of Nexus in a certain way of your turn. So there'll be a card that allows you to move an extra space, or there's a card that allows you to capture farther away, or there's a card that allows you to resurrect a dead ship, kind of like
Mhm.
Shogi when you bring a piece back to life. And so
Yeah.
so those cards can add a little bit of variety to the base game of Nexus. That's a lot of
Spice
fun.
up, spice up a bit the abstract.
Yes.
It's on the website already. Is it available or
I have. I apologize. I had meant to put them up before we talked, but they'll be up today. I just gotta
oh,
put it
okay,
late.
okay. Because I was looking around, but okay, fine. But yeah, good to know. Some people maybe need a bit of luck or a bit of
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, some kind of variation. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
is a good way. A
A
bit
bit
a
of
bit like Santorini. You have cards with
yes.
God's power, and I feel is a
Mm-hmm.
similar idea, which I guess works well.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt it's kind of like I said, mentioned, it's a bit like Onitama, where you
Huh.
start out the game with asymmetrical powers,
Mm-hmm.
asymmetrical move types, but then
And
there's
then reshuffle.
you have to cycle through each time, so you can actually play Nexus with that style too. So if you're going to play play a card, then you have to know you're giving that up to your opponent to be able to take next round. So
Okay, a bit more deterministic. Okay, I like more of that. I mean, same as you. Tend to like games with the least possible luck involved.
mhm.
um, I feel it makes more. I don't know. I just enjoy more to know that it's all in my hands. Uh,
I
and
agree.
if I lose, it's my fault, and
Exactly.
if I win, it's my fault as well. Maybe it's a bit hard,
I agree.
to myself, but yeah. Okay. Thank you very much again. If there is
Yeah.
nothing else, I think we've been talking for an hour. You need to drink something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
actually, you go
Thank
to
you very
work,
much
right?
for. Yeah, I'll go back to work.
Because here is 9 p.m. In London, UK, but here in Portland is 1 p.m. or
1
something
p.m.
like. Yeah. So cool.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun, man.
Oh,
Appreciate
that's
doing it.
been great. Thanks to you for sharing. This is one of the games, like Nexus is one of the games I pick up maybe during the pandemic, I think. Uh, and then yeah, it became one of my favorite quickly. Now I'm actually not playing that much, but I got my like 300 elo points on BGA, my solid 300, and I'm there. I'm stuck there at the moment. Okay, thank you again. Have a good day,
Yeah.
and
Thank you.
bye everyone.
Later.